Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul CPR. When you think of the holidays, do you feel happy, sad, stressed, or grief-stricken? What is billed as the most wonderful time of the year simply isn't for all of us. Some of us literally have the blues. Thank you for tuning in today. In the previous episode, we talked about holding on to grudges like the Grinch and how that emotional state can steal joy. And by holding a grudge, we carry the burden of resentment, which festers inside of us and impacts our well-being and changes nothing. So I encourage all of us to consider what and who is important to us and to reflect on what we need to heal any resolved internal conflict. Is it an apology, an explanation? Are we looking to settle a score, to punish, to fight? Or are we willing to turn toward them with empathy and to try to step into their shoes to seek understanding? Are we willing to let go of expectations and therefore disappointments that come along with them to allow ourselves to move on without the burden we've been carrying? What will it take to open our hearts to do so? Is it compassion, like 360 degrees for ourselves and for those who hurt us? Healthy boundaries? Are we waiting in the holding room of resentment for them to approach us and for them to just know what we need and want from them? Now, most of us need time and space to figure this out, and often some outside impartial objective guidance. Now, beyond grudges, the holidays bring out a lot of different feelings in people. Some merry and some not. Regardless, you are not alone, and you are not necessarily a Grinch just because you may be feeling like you cannot wait until all of this is done with and the calendar is turned to January 2nd. Isn't there just a lot of pressure to be happy during the holidays? And for some, the pressure to be happy makes them, unhappy or stressed. From joyful music to greeting cards to spoken sentiments to work parties to family gatherings, it can be overwhelming for any one of us, and certainly for the introverts among us. And if your schedule is already super busy, working, parenting, volunteering, and the like, and then you add in the shopping, the decorating, the socializing, the baking, the cooking, and if you're on a budget and trying to be financially responsible, I'm going to say, please stay off social media. Those ads pop up and down the rabbit hole you will go. And next thing you know, you will have purchased all sorts of gadgets and products you never knew you needed. It reminds me of those TBS channel commercials when it was added to our 3-channel television sets, plus TBS, back in the 70s. It had the best shows and commercials for things like the Rhinestone Stud Setter. Anyone remember that? Anyway, you can blow a budget in an instant and be in debt for the new year quickly, losing the joy of the season when that first credit card bill arrives. And what about depression in general? Or do you feel it looming, coming in like stormy weather? Well, there's something called seasonal affective disorder, or the acronym SAD, SAD. It's a type of depression that's related to changes in seasons with shorter days and less daylight. And that tends to begin and end about the same time every year. And most people with SAD notice symptoms starting in the fall that tend to start resolving in the spring. Symptoms sort of remind me of a bear preparing to hibernate, kind of overeating and then gaining weight, oversleeping, low energy, loss of interest in activities, feeling sad and down about self and life. And if you're experiencing this, please don't write it off. Okay. According to the Mayo Clinic, it is treatable, often with phototherapy, possibly added with psychotherapy and some medications, and often it's linked to low vitamin D. So, what if it were that simple? Prescription vitamin D and a sun lamp. You can create mood balance year round. So, don't suffer seasonally. Do consult with your physician. And what about any of the issues I've already mentioned? And add to that someone with family problems. Well, holidays tend to make problems worse. Sibling rivalries, overbearing parents, toxic dynamics, and the like. And if you're a single adult, well, there's always that relative who tries to figure out what's wrong in your life, right? Look, it's normal to get annoyed by different familial dynamics and to need to slip away for a quiet moment to kind of regroup from time to time. Maybe offer to walk the dog or walk yourself or take out the trash, whatever gives you a break from what feels bad for you. Now, annoying dynamics are one thing, but when they are truly toxic, then boundaries should be in place before you even arrive. So don't let the smell of your favorite pie prevent you from honoring your boundaries, because boundaries are yours and they're for you to respect and honor after all. Now, for people who have actually suffered the loss of someone close to them, let's say through death or divorce or a breakup, the holidays can be a painful reminder of who isn't there. And this leads us to holiday grief. So if you are in a season of mourning, the holiday lights may dim in your darkness, right? There's likely silence from those who aren't sure what to say. And maybe there are messages from others of how you should be feeling by now. And the celebrations are going to continue around you when you feel your world has stopped turning altogether. And there's going to be photos of happy people on social media, all while you find it difficult to find anything to feel except your own personal pain and anything to see except your personal loss. And whether you're actually coping with a death, a divorce, a relationship breakup, even a job loss, this is the time of year when many people get the news that they've been cut from a company. And this is real grief that you're going to experience. But any significant bereavement, okay, any loss, you will grieve. And the holidays just remind you even more intensely that your life has changed. Now, you may have heard this term holiday grief, and it just means that the holidays tend to trigger grief more intensely, like sadness and those other difficult emotions that are associated with loss. The holidays are such a specific mark on the calendar, right? And they invoke such sensory filled memories. So think about that, sensory filled memories, sights, sounds, smells, all tied into perhaps traditions that may have been shared are now incomplete or possibly non existent. And then that pressure to feel festive and to join in celebrations can be maybe at best overwhelming and at worst devastating. And regardless of whether your loss is recent or not, The holidays have this magical way of making any loss seem recent. You know, as I was decorating for Christmas this weekend and I was hanging the stockings on the mantle, I had a moment as I held the angel tree topper that my grandmother had crocheted for me. And these memories flooded in on the traditions of her spending the night at our home on Christmas Eve, watching my brother and myself rise with the delight at Santa having found us despite our not having a chimney. I used to worry about that a lot. And then my parents and my brother and I would head to her house for Christmas Day lunch. And the feelings in my body, the literal pain in my chest and the tightness in my throat and the tears that welled up in my eyes were as if she just passed away last month. And she did pass away in November, but it was November 1991. So what is that? 33 years ago? So when I think of her, I can still recall her sweet smell when I would kiss her cheek and the softness of her skin. So more sensory connection, right? But that sadness that washed over me became this fondness and these smiles and laughter and warmth as I remember her fondly and become grateful for the time I had with her. So this is the experience that time and healing can bring following loss. For people with more recent loss, grief is considered acute, and the painful emotions do not typically wash over so quickly. My dear friend Kara, whose husband Christian passed last month after a 5-year long battle with colorectal cancer, is experiencing something I would call complicated relief to know he is no longer suffering from this insidious disease that robbed him and them of so much, but also that indescribable sorrow that he's actually gone and that longing to be with him. And this will be her and their children's first Christmas without him. And while I know from my conversations with her that she can hold both joy and sorrow at the same time, I know from my personal and professional experience that firsts are worse. Now, the first Christmas, I mean, the first Hanukkah or birthday or wedding anniversary, and it's no different for people who are experiencing divorce or a significant breakup. If you still love the other person, and these sometimes can be even harder than death as you may see them move on with someone new. So there may be even more to grieve than the loss of the person in your life. Now, for those of us who have lost a child, what can I say? It isn't supposed to be that way, is it? I've lost friends and family to death and loves to fate, perhaps, but to lose my firstborn to illness almost sunk me. I say this to you that I understand the depths of grief, its complications, its punishment, its triggers. And what I can say about that is that you must honor your grief, and that in this season of bright lights and celebrations and gatherings, you can learn to recognize your triggers so that you can anticipate them and brace for impact and recover more quickly. And triggers are those unexpected jolts, right? That bring up uncomfortable feelings of loss and put your emotions in what I call the spin cycle of the washing machine. So the goal is to minimize the stress reaction in your mind, body, spirit, and ultimately your choices and therefore your consequences. So while anything that brings up your loss and creates pain for you is considered a trigger, there are some common triggers that you can become familiar with as you increase your awareness. I'm going to talk about the common triggers, but I'm going to wait till after this first break because we're right on the cusp of that. So don't go far, and we'll be back with more Soul CPR and holiday grief.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today or listening when you are able to. We're talking about holiday grief and the different sources of that, and we're up to grief triggers. There are some common ones, and the whole goal is to kind of prepare for them so you're not caught off guard. So experiencing any kind of sensory stimuli that are associated with a memory of someone you've lost or the thing you lost, and this can even be a pet, right? Pets are like family for so many of us. But for example, if you're thinking of someone you've lost, if you hear a song they sang or what your song was, and you hear it on the radio or a movie you watched together, or smelling a cologne that they loved, or like my grandmother, she always baked these certain cookies. So that smell, if I smell those cookies, anything like that you see. When I see the Queen Anne chocolate covered cherries come out in the stores in time for this season, that was something my father always bought and put under the tree and said they were from Santa to each of us. So these things can trigger grief depending on where you're at in your journey of grief. And of course, any milestone that's on the calendar of their any kind of anniversary date, those are like punctuation marks on your memories, right? Whether it's a special occasion, a holiday, of course, which is what we're in right now, their birthday, their death date, your divorce date, your wedding date, what might it be, depending on the loss you're experiencing. And then, of course, physically being at a place that you had experienced with them or that you had planned to experience with them can be a trigger. News of others either dying in a similar fashion or someone else divorcing or breaking up or being betrayed or learning of who got the position that you were let go from at the company, these are going to be triggers. And oftentimes we find ourselves exposing ourselves carelessly to information, whether it's through social media or with friends. And sometimes we have to ask for what we need or avoid certain situations or news outlets, whatever it may be. But learning to recognize our triggers is really all about awareness and getting to know ourselves on an intimate level. And many people do well journaling their grief triggers and kind of noting what corresponds between their thoughts and their emotions and their physical responses, and then how they show up, their behaviors. So when I say thought responses, something that triggers your grief might be disbelief, confusion, preoccupation. What are you dreaming about? Are you experiencing forgetfulness or restlessness? Are you feeling the need to talk about this person or this thing or the experience, the breakup, the death? What might it be? Or are you avoiding talking about it to protect other people so they don't feel uncomfortable? I went through that with the death of my son. Other people were so uncomfortable, I avoided it, and then that made me feel more uncomfortable and even guilty. I felt like I had not acknowledged my child. Emotional responses. These triggers typically include like these feelings of sadness, anger, guilt, anxiety, loneliness, hopelessness, shock, yearning, relief, numbness even, right? I said I was feeling guilty just because I didn't speak up about him. And then physical responses. You might feel muscle pain and tension or changes in your appetite, your sleep, digestion, energy. Some people find they clench teeth. That's another thing I did. Shortness of breath, tightness in the chest or throat. I experienced these as well. I ended up being diagnosed with mitral valve prolapse. Thought I was having anxiety attacks because my heart would race, or that's flutter. It's what it felt like. Nausea, headaches. These are typical physiological responses in the body that would correspond with these thoughts and emotional feelings, right? And if you start journaling this, you'll start connecting what's happening with which thing. And then the behavioral response, the actions, how we show up in life, these may look like avoiding people or yelling at people or stopping activities that once brought joy, or maybe even pretending to be okay, or giving up on goals and objectives, or losing interest in things that used to motivate you, including self-care, basics. So sometimes we have to go backward before we can move forward. And for example, we have to start noticing something that's out of the ordinary, like a behavior that's actually a reaction to the stress you're feeling from the trigger. So I've got 5 steps to help you recognize your grief triggers that I want to share with you. And this is from an article that I wrote for Your Tango. And this link will be in the show notes if you want to read the full article at some point. But ask yourself a series of questions about your behaviors and observe yourself from a place of non-judgment. And the questions like, how am I showing up or not showing up in life that looks like a stress reaction? And the second one is then connect that physical feeling to what's happening. What is the feeling in my body when I show up this way? So start with the behaviors. Sometimes we got to go backwards. What am I doing that's out of the ordinary? What am I feeling in my body when I show up this way? Now, number 3, name the emotion that goes with that. What am I really feeling emotionally when I show up for life this way or don't show up? And then 4th, ask yourself about your thought processes. What exactly am I thinking when all of this is happening? What's behind all of this? Finally, pin down the actual source of the grief trigger. What happened? When did it happen? Where was I at? Who was involved? Why did it remind me of my loss? Once you recognize your triggers, you can plan ahead to cope with them rather than just anticipate them with fear or let them blindside you when that date on the calendar arrives. Be prepared with something more uplifting. And avoidance may seem like the answer at first, but it's just another type of internal conflict, and it's not the same thing as coping. Avoidance is not coping. I would encourage you to celebrate their life and your love for them is if this is a death in a way that promotes your healing. You can invite friends and family to talk and share favorite memories and laughter. And if it's divorce or a breakup, ask yourself, what did you learn about yourself in this time? What memory do you want to hold on to, and what do you need to let go of? Now, if it's a death, do something for someone else in your loved one's memory. You can't help but help yourself when you help someone else. Step outside of your pain. I promise it feels good. There's been suggestions from people to write a letter to your loved one and share with them how you've grown through your grief because they were in your life, and include a favorite memory. And you make this a new tradition for yourself, and then look at it year after year or on that anniversary date, whatever the punctuation mark is for you, and see really how much you grow year to year. Now, those are expected triggers, right? These calendar dates, holidays, etc. What about the unexpected grief triggers that you really can't plan for? You're in the grocery store and this song comes on over the speaker. Really can't plan for that. You got to remember what you know, because you've loved, you've also hurt. Grief is love. Remind yourself that the pain you feel in the moment of the trigger is because you have also loved. And then with that conscious awareness, conjure up a happy memory, a grateful breath, and let the tears flow. Allow yourself to feel the emotion that comes up. Acknowledge it and release it with the awareness of knowing why you feel it. Love. And choose to now love yourself through that pain. If possible, have a safe place to go or someone trusted to call. A safe place to escape to. And we can all do this, at least mentally. Choosing a calm location, your happy place, whether it's the beach or the mountains or the lakeside. You know how that commercial Calgon Take Me Away? Have that place and escape there mentally. Connect to your senses and take a mental vacation. This is a real mindfulness meditation exercise. And while using conscious breathing to calm your nervous system, inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth at a slower rate, focus in your mind's eye on the sensory connection, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, and the textures of this place. And this exercise will bring you out of your stress reaction and into a calm, relaxed state. There will always be something to remind you of your losses in life. But as you grow your awareness and recognition and in preparedness, and when you cooperate with time as a gift and healer, your grief triggers can become a positive reminder of your loved one, as I described my experience with the crocheted angel my grandmother made me. After all, you never want to forget them. Consider choosing a beautiful memory or a photo to see in your mind's eye and to embrace when a trigger is set in motion. And you'll feel gratitude and love in place of all that previously haunted you. And if this is divorce instead, whether you chose it or not, choose you now. Grieve the loss. And sometimes it's more than the person. It's the dream of what should have been or could have been. And sometimes you need that space and time to simply get in touch with you again, independent of the relationship that you spent, whether it was months, years, or decades in. It's a true loss. For some of you, it's your first big loss in life. Give yourself the grace and the space to heal it. If you are the person in someone's life who's going through a loss during the holidays, please be aware of their circumstance. Let them know it's okay, that they're not okay right now, that if they need to talk, that you're willing to listen. Try not to give guidance unsolicited. Do be open. Do invite them to socialize. Let them know it's okay to say no if they're not ready. Other things I would say is just, really don't have expectations of them. So just allowing them, again, that space and grace. I think one word they need to hear is that it's okay to be selfish as well, because a lot of people that I hear in my practice is I feel selfish to not go share in my family's this or my friends that. So please support them in that way. Let them know that during this time of their healing, it's absolutely okay that you're there for them in any way they need. Okay? It's time for our second break. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And we're back. Thank you for tuning into Soul CPR here on Bold Brave TV. I'm Ann Papayotti, and we are talking about holiday grief. The holidays are a time when people typically reflect on the previous year and are supposed to find things to be thankful for the most part. And sometimes that's just hard. So despite all festive intentions, not everyone's holidays are full of warm family memories or a sense of community. How are you coping this season? What may be making you feel blue? Is there a loss you're having to cope with this holiday season? Coping is an interesting word. It implies more than surviving, at least one step more, shall we say. We start actually figuring out how to deal with challenges we encounter, and we do so in a manner that's thoughtful and in the least adequate. So perhaps it means we can successfully rise to the occasion and manage through, even if it's a struggle on some level. So managing grief during the holidays, from my own experience with loss, I created 7 strategies, and I believe this might be in a Your Tango article that I'm sharing in the show notes. If not, it's in a blog on my website, which we'll give you at the end of the show as well. But know, as in knowledge, know your no, N-O. You don't have to be the life of the party, okay? So whatever you're coping with, again, job loss, divorce, breakup, making a decision about a relationship, or in the worst case, death. Know your no. You don't have to be the life of the party or even an attendant. Whether it's online or in person, give yourself permission to be in a stage of grief that simply isn't ready. If your friends and family don't understand, they haven't experienced what you're going through, and that's okay. In fact, that's good because they haven't experienced it, right? And it's okay for you to not do what's good for everyone else. Do what's good for you. What do you believe you need right now? Say yes to that and no to the rest. You empower yourself when you recognize and claim your power of choice and honor your personal limits. Don't be pressured to do what others believe you should be doing right now. Grieve however you want to, however you need to. Grieving is very personal, just like loving is. As we said before, grief is love. You're allowed to grieve on your own timeline and in your own way. Remember, it is a process, not an event. So there's no set time to start or end, no right way or wrong way. You'll learn that there are better ways than others for you, but take the pressure off. Just be careful of the temptation, I'd say, to numb your pain with what I call the over behaviors, like over drinking, overeating, overspending, over Netflix binging, whatever it may be, overworking. Obviously, some that I just mentioned are more detrimental to our health than others, some to our finances, some to our productivity, but all of them to our life balance. Another one is to limit social media. And I say this because why pour salt into an open wound? If seeing smiling faces and people rocking around the Christmas tree reminds you of what you will not have in your life this year, don't look. While we're all happy for others, if we're mourning, too much of another person's good thing can keep us stuck in thoughts of our own bad things or missing things. But know that this time will pass. This is temporary in your life, even though it feels so permanent. Eventually, your wound will become a scar if you nurture it and allow it to heal. Once it has, you will be able to celebrate others without being so vulnerable to inflicting more pain on yourself. Another one is to relish your favorite holiday traditions. And what I mean is, don't lose more than you already have. Try to maintain what's sentimental and special for you on some level. Let go of traditions you never enjoyed anyway. Most of us have a few of those. You may get emotional, so, have some tissues and chocolates around on hand or cookies. It's okay. But hold on to something. And at the same time, I'm going to add to that, create some new traditions. Life has changed. That is the reality. The holidays have changed. So you may find yourself also grieving the loss of a tradition, just as you're grieving the loss of a relationship, a dream of how it was supposed to be. But rather than feeling like you're missing out or dreading something, what can you do differently and embrace it as a new tradition in your new reality? Is there something that you've always wanted to do but haven't done yet? And take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually. Move your body, challenge your mind, feed your spirit. Perhaps past holidays were busy and a bit like seasonal fruitcake, a little bit of everything thrown in together. Take a real holiday. The Old English origin of the compound word holiday are holy and day. So perhaps dismissing the commercialism and frantic scheduling that may have been part of your previous experience will allow you to reconnect to the core meaning of the season for yourself. And maybe now you can say it's really time for reflection and relaxation and renewal. And lastly, forgive yourself and others. If someone hasn't experienced what you're going through, they likely will not know what to say or say the wrong thing with all the right intentions. And remember that anything anyone says or does, or doesn't say or doesn't do, is about them, their fears or their insecurities or their beliefs. So try to accept it as such and forgive them in your heart and in your mind. And while you're at it, forgive yourself for whatever expectation you had of yourself that you haven't been able to meet just yet. When it comes to grief and the holidays, you're going through a time of mourning. You will arrive at the other side where healing and acceptance and living continues. And as Snoopy says, keep looking up. That's the secret to life. I quote Snoopy in the chapter titled The Gift of Charlie Brown in my co-authored book, The Gift of Shift. And I share my experience with grief and the loss of my firstborn son in that chapter. And I'm going to read an excerpt for you now. Burying your child commands a response of, why me? Why my son? Why my daughter? It challenges even the strongest in faith, yielding doubts of any deity. I write this from a place of knowing. My firstborn child, a son I named Jansen, passed away in infancy. I love the grief cycle is far from linear. It is something like the spin cycle in a washing machine, whipping rapidly one direction and then another before leaving you wrung out to dry. I believe no one reading this would judge or fault me for having been stuck like a sock in the washer door gasket. I was stuck in helplessness, despair, self-imposed social isolation, and self-pity. No one likely would blame me for having blamed myself, his father, the doctors and nurses, or even God. No one would judge me for wanting to die so that I could be with my son. But would anyone truly understand? I would hope not, because that would mean that they too had lost a child. I believe there is an opportunity offered to us, an invisible hand perhaps to grab hold of to help us climb out of those indescribable depths of grief. It comes in various forms and in opportunities to turn our pain into purpose, to give meaning to the loss, and to create something good from something so tragic. It is something that motivates us to look up rather than down. And when we do, there is light. At first squint, we turn away until at last we stand facing it, even basking in it. The catastrophes Schultz penned for Charlie Brown were far less significant than losing a child. But in his featured stories, Charlie Brown would experience something hurtful and be stuck in his pain and negative thinking until something or someone offered him that opportunity to look up. I can't help but think of how Linus in Schultz's animated television special based on the Peanuts comic strip, A Charlie Brown Christmas, stepped into the spotlight to share the true story of Christmas, capturing Charlie's attention and turning him away from his personal experience and toward a greater meaning. When Linus finishes speaking, Charlie Brown picks up his little tree and steps outside. He looks up at the dark sky full of twinkling stars. He finally feels happy down inside, the way Christmas is supposed to make you feel. The hand that I grabbed hold of was a chance to speak at a conference for resident pediatricians and pediatric surgeons, where I shared my family's story. It was then that I felt a shift in the core of my being, releasing guilt and blame, sadness and fear. In that moment, Jansen's life was given purpose and meaning, because his story would be carried in the hearts and minds of these doctors and benefit the children in their care throughout their careers. his story would indirectly touch families for years to come. You see, my grief, my pain turned into purpose that day because I let go of the expectation and my belief that my imperfect child, my sick child, and my grief that I would not get to mother him for my entire life was different than the expectation of what it's supposed to be, right? That I had mothered him for a purpose and that his life had meaning, as short as it was. Just like Charlie Brown's little tree was imperfectly perfect, so was my child and my experience as motherhood. And I reframed what motherhood meant as Charlie Brown did Christmas. Thank you for allowing me to share that. We're going to take our final break. When we come back, closing thoughts on holiday grief.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Thank you again for joining me today. You know, grief is a natural response to the death of someone you loved or the loss of someone or something important to you. An array of feelings and reactions can be intense and extreme early on following loss. For most, this will wane over time with a community of support or tools for stress management, emotional awareness, self-care, and the ability to shift to a focus on gratitude. And for others, grief can be prolonged and negatively impact physical and mental health, as well as relationships and productivity. So recognize for yourself if grief has become something of a constant companion. Because grief left unresolved can get stuck like a sock in that washer door gasket, destined to be spun and wrung over and over again. If you feel stuck in grief and pain, and your life is being adversely affected, yet you desire to move forward but can't seem to find the way, reach out. That just may be the next best step for you, to anyone, to me or any professional that may understand your pain and be able to help you. And some other resources that I recommend are the Compassionate Friends, and that's compassionatefriends.org is their website, or griefnet.org. And for a more extensive list of resources, you can visit mygriefangels.org. And these resources will be in the show notes as well. and there will be links to your Tango articles on holiday grief, and my website as well. I think I have a blog on grief or two there, skyviewcoaching.com. And you can read more about how I experienced grief and the loss of my son, Jansen, in the chapter titled The Gift of Charlie Brown in my co-authored book, The Gift of Shift, which is available from Amazon. You'll find a link to that also from my website, skyviewcoaching.com. Now, my wish for all who are grieving or experiencing holiday blues in any form or fashion, or dealing with depression and the holidays compound it, or any type of loss, right, is that you embrace this holiday season. If you're grieving, embrace your grief, but that you also wrap yourself in hope, that you create meaning and find purpose and look up to see opportunity. And if you're not grieving and you're or going through any of those other experiences that impact your ability to find joy in the holidays, if you're actually feeling merry and bright, God bless. But let us not forget those who are struggling at this time of year. Being respectful and understanding and lovingly present is the best holiday gift we can give them. And may we all be grateful for, respectful, and kind to one another this holiday season and every day. So as this episode of Soul CPR comes to a close, remember that healing is not a linear journey, but rather a process of profound transformation. And if today's episode resonated with you, then please share the podcast with those who might need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. You can connect with me on social media. On Facebook, it's at Skyview Coaching. On Instagram, LinkedIn, and X at Ann Papayotti. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. And until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. I thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Good day.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.